Hi, Dr. Carlos Todd here, and welcome back to another video on how to fight less, love more. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about how social media triggers anger. There are a lot of angry comments and maybe angry videos on social media. We're going to talk a little bit about how anger happens on social media and what you can do about it. The social media landscape is really full of people who have very, very strong opinions, and that in some ways can trigger anger in some individuals. So that's something that I want us to talk a little bit about today. Some people don't really realize that the algorithms in many ways are designed to trigger strong emotion. No strong emotions, no money for Facebook, for Instagram, for TikTok. They can trigger a happy response, annoyed response to kind of keep you on the platform. And the more they have your attention, ultimately, the more they have your money. But there's an effect here that I think can be problematic. For example, many people end up struggling with issues around anger. People don't really realize that social media can create emotional drainage, right? Feeling emotionally drained. You've watched all this stuff and it's just a lot. You're just scrolling. It's just a bunch of exhaustion because a lot of times people are comparing themselves to others and in an environment where oftentimes what you're seeing is not real. People become more triggered. They become more agitated, become less patient. Social media is not just about influencing what people think. It really is about influencing how you feel. So how do you manage this? Well, I think one of the first things that you want to be able to do is to understand the mechanisms behind it, right? So one of the first things I want to talk to you about is social media is constantly trying to activate emotional comparison, comparing yourself to what you're seeing. And that comparison is a trigger. That trigger keeps you on the screen. Therefore, you can end up with challenges there, right? One of the biggest emotional triggers is around issues of relationships, lifestyles, success, appearance, money, parenting, all of those things. If people stay on the platform, they can really find themselves in a situation where they are constantly, for some people, feeling down. I mean, there are studies out there that show that young teens are suffering from more depression and anxiety because of the impact of social media on them. So what are some of the feelings that it creates? Resentment, insecurity, frustration, feelings of inadequacy. People just are struggling now because of what they're seeing. And I will tell you that one of the big drivers in terms of anger is something that I see with couples all the time is the issue of infidelity. People get into relationships or connections with people on social media, and it may not be a sexual relationship, but that person definitely has your attention, and partner finds out, the anger becomes pretty evident because of the discovery of this thing. And part of the issue too is that you compare your partner, right, who's quote unquote nagging or who seems not to be a success, and you compare them to your life and it's you angry, and sometimes can drive people to a place where that anger now pushes them to seek out someone else. But I'll talk about infidelity in another video. The other point that I made a little bit earlier is the algorithm rewards outrage. That's what these things are set up to do. They're designed to keep your attention. They're designed to drain you emotionally, to keep you emotionally charged. And what is the result there, right? Outrage, controversy, conflict, arguments. And this often spreads into a situation where you feel emotionally imbalanced. And that in itself, it can create real challenges, right? You have people are getting into political arguments, they're getting into arguments over gender, right? All that stuff that's been happening. Debates about men and women, men are this, women are this, right? And it's the constant, it's on and on and on. And you get out into the real world, you take these us versus them views, and it's a constant feeling of anger, right? Relationship, right? Rage-baiting content, right? Rage-baiting content, right? You guys know this, right? You look on certain commenters and they're saying the most outrageous thing. You look at especially obviously these bots, right? And you look at them, they have two friends. They're specifically there to say something to outrage you so that you start now rage typing, and then you're raising your heart rate. It's just a really, really challenging place to constantly be in. Online communication removes the emotional restraint. People say the thing that they wouldn't say in quote unquote real life. Because screens reduce emotional accountability, you're not really accountable. You can say something and then you're gone. It decreases empathy. It makes you much more impulsive. It can create a situation where your emotional reactions they're just much faster, right? People are becoming more aggressive because they don't have to deal with the immediate consequences, and it's just way too much, right? People love the comment section, right? Because sparks outrage. The other point is that social media keeps your nervous system activated, keeps you at a level where you're constantly like, ugh. Most people don't realize how overstimulated you are, and that's the other thing. Like you go to these platforms and you get upset about a certain thing, and you get upset so often that you don't really realize that those upset feelings are taking you to a level where your heart rate is up, you have some kind of stress response. But the more that happens, the less you realize that it's happening. And you stay in that state. And if you stay in that state, then you can find yourself just easily triggered, right? Very, very easily triggered. And so your nervous system never really gets a chance to calm itself down. And you're in a situation now where you're struggling to remain calm. And I estimate that this creates a bit of hypervigilance, and that really is not a good thing as you move through the world. So people end up doom scrolling, and the last thing you do at night is just go through all of these posts, and then you go to bed. Your mind is just really not at rest, and the constant stimulation, constant feeling of comparison really is the thing that helps to drive anger. Social media can intensify relationship conflict because of that comparison. Social media affects relationships more than people think. You don't realize it. It creates jealousy. It creates this is something that I see in my work. A partner will go through people's social media and they'll check to see how many times this person has liked your post or didn't like your post. Then the conversation in real life begins. You need to unfollow this person. They're checking to see if you liked or loved the post, right? Or if you commented on a post. These kinds of things bring conflict and anger into relationships, right? It creates comparing your relationship to other people's relationship. It creates situations where there's emotional cheating. I mentioned that earlier. And then what I've seen in my work too is that these can actually create public arguments. A situation where people will do things like take what they've seen on social media, it drives outrage, and then they'll go to the person's job or meet them somewhere, and the rest is history. They just do some crazy things. People develop jealousies. They seek validation online, right? So they're asking, their followers or random strangers what they think about this stuff, right? And a lot of times people don't know you, they don't know your circumstances, and people can give some really, really, really mean and nasty comment. So what can you do? So we're on to the section about solutions. What are some things you can do if social media is driving anger in your life? You don't really want to quit social media. For some people, they're able to do it, but I think realistically in this environment, a lot of people are just, social media is really part of their life. The goal is to stop letting it emotionally control you. What does this mean? It means limiting your exposure, putting yourself on a restriction. Like, I'm only going to do this for X amount of time. And for some people, you can actually put timers and different things on your device to help you kind of log out of these social media platforms at a certain point during the day. Don't follow triggering content. If you're scrolling through something and your Apple Watch is telling you that your heart rate is in 90s or over 100, it's not something that you want to be watching. So paying attention to your physical responses in disagreement as you scroll through social media, I think, is an important thing. You don't want to be doom scrolling. If you realize that the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour just scrolling through, it's not something that you want to be doing. Take emotional breaks. Take periods of time where, I'm not going to do this today. It's just too much. I'm not going to allow myself to go on today. You want to pay very close attention to before, during, and after. How are you actually feeling when you're scrolling? And I tell people now, get a feelings wheel and check, right? What are you actually feeling? Do you feel happy? Does it make you feel sad? Does it make you feel reactive in some way? Find out what your actual emotions are as you are on social media. Does it change your mood? How do repeated triggers impact you? You scroll through social media and then you go and you argue with your husband or your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend, and you notice that your reaction, if you do a little bit of introspection, you realize that your reaction is largely based on you've watched all these other people with their content and you feel somehow dissatisfied with what you have as a partner. It's not a good look. So I want you to consider getting better at curating your feed, deciding who you want to have in your feed and who you want to exclude. Set timing limits, as I said earlier, right? Sometimes take a week off of social media, see how you feel, then come back to it. Finally, protect your emotional energy. Do protect your emotional energy. If you notice that social media is making you more angry, reactive, or emotionally exhausted, take it seriously, because these responses can really impact your productivity. They can impact your outlook, and oftentimes it's impacting the way how you see the world. I mean, I saw a video one time where, it's not a video, a picture, where they were destroying this guy who looked as though he was kind of on the beach, and it was like a close-up shot as though he was like sitting in a chair on the beach, but then they panned out and it was a big sand pile and in their construction site or something like that. He was not even on the beach. So a lot of these things are fake. You don't know what people are doing to acquire what they have. I mean, it becomes really important to kind of pay attention to what's going on, how things are impacting you, because a lot of this stuff is just not real. And even if it is real, you don't really know what that person did or what these people did to get to where they are. And there's always the question of, can they sustain the effort, or if that is for you, because a lot of times that life may not be for you, or it may. I don't know. What I do know is that if you're having a negative or anger response over social media, you want to be able to gain some control over yourself. If you want to learn more skills on how to manage anger, visit us at masteringanger.com, where we teach you the skills on how to fight less, love more. Or you can visit us on couplesfightschool.com to learn all about fighting less, loving more in the relationship realm. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one, where we talk about how to fight less, love more.